Claire Bennett heard the sentence that ended her marriage while standing 6 feet from the man who still believed she trusted him. She had come to the council chamber because their baby had kicked so hard during her afternoon rest that she had laughed aloud, and for one foolish moment, she wanted Ethan to feel it too. Her hand was already near the bronze handle when Duke Gregory Hale said, "Then we are agreed. Lady Victoria will take the Luna throne once the heir is safely born." Claire stopped. Inside, papers shifted. Someone cleared his throat. Then Ethan Blackwood answered in the calm, measured voice he used when a decision had already been made. "Yes, the announcement will wait until after the birth. Claire will keep her private lands, her household, and the honors due her position. Victoria will serve as Luna for the Northern Alliance." The child moved beneath Claire's palm. She waited for Ethan to add that he had not yet spoken to his wife because he could never decide such a thing without her. He did not. Duke Hale asked whether Claire might resist. Ethan was quiet for a moment. "She will understand the cost of refusing the alliance." Claire almost laughed. For years beside him, and that was what he believed about her. That she would understand. That she would absorb the wound because the kingdom needed it. A second voice asked about the heir. Ethan replied that the child would remain first in succession and be raised at Blackwood Palace under royal protection. Claire stepped backward before the doors opened. She crossed the marble corridor slowly, nodding to 2 guards, greeting a maid by name, and returning to the private wing as though nothing had happened. In her sitting room, she removed the silver Luna crown from her hair and placed it on the table. Her fingers were steady. That frightened her more than tears would have. The throne itself did not matter as much as the ease with which Ethan had promised it away. He had turned their marriage into a political arrangement without giving her even the dignity of a conversation. When he came to their rooms that evening, he looked exactly as he always did after council. Dark hair slightly disordered, black. Coat open at the throat, the smell of cedar and winter clinging to him. His expression softened when he saw her. "How are you feeling?" "Fine." "And the baby?" Claire looked at him. "Restless." Ethan smiled and knelt beside her chair. When he placed his hand on her stomach, the baby moved again. His whole face changed. For a moment he was not the Alpha King, only an expectant father delighted by a tiny movement under his palm. That tenderness hurt more than cruelty would have. Claire wondered how he could love the child so openly while calmly planning to remove the child's mother from his side. "I missed dinner," Ethan said. "I thought we could eat upstairs." "I already ate." He looked surprised. Claire always waited for him when he was in the palace. "You were busy," she said. "I didn't want to interrupt." Ethan studied her for a heartbeat. Then he kissed her temple and thanked her for understanding. Claire nearly flinched at the word. Instead, she smiled. Later, when he slept beside her, she stared into the darkness and thought through every sentence she had heard. If she confronted him now, he would explain. He would speak of borders, soldiers, grain routes, winter roads. He might even apologize for keeping the decision from her. But explanations would not change the fact that he believed he had the right to decide first and inform her later. Claire rested both hands over their child. She would not beg Ethan to choose her. She would not compete with Victoria Hale for a place that had once been promised to her in marriage vows. And until Claire understood exactly how much power Ethan intended to keep over her and the baby, he would not know she had heard anything at all. Claire's silence was so complete that Ethan mistook it for peace. The next morning she joined him at breakfast, asked about a flooded village in the south, and listened while he spoke about troop movements along the northern pass. She did not mention Victoria. She did not ask why northern tailors had suddenly arrived at the palace or why the guest wing was being prepared weeks before the winter summit. She simply stopped reaching for him. She no longer sent notes asking when council would end. She stopped waiting for late dinners. When he worked after midnight, she no longer appeared in his study with tea and an opinion he had not requested but usually needed. Ethan noticed. He responded with gifts. Pears from the southern orchards appeared on her desk. A new book of poetry was left beside her bed. He ordered the nursery fire kept warm day and night. Claire thanked him for each kindness. None of it answered the question he had refused to let her ask. 3 days later, the first public sign of her replacement appeared at a council luncheon. Claire arrived to find Victoria Hale seated in the chair normally reserved for the Luna beside the northern delegation. It was not Claire's throne, not officially, but everyone in the room understood seating at court. Victoria rose immediately, and offered the chair back with perfect courtesy. I was told the arrangement had changed for the summit. Claire looked toward Ethan. He had heard. He said nothing. One steward hurried forward, pale with embarrassment, and moved Victoria 2 places down. Claire sat without comment. The meeting continued. She could feel the entire table waiting for a scene that never came. Later, Ethan caught up with her in the gallery. That seating was a mistake. Was it? Claire asked. He slowed. You know what I mean. I'm not sure I do. For the first time, something uneasy moved across his face. Before he could answer, a messenger interrupted them. Claire watched him turn immediately toward the kingdom's next crisis and understood how the betrayal had become possible. There would always be another emergency more urgent than the conversation he owed her. That afternoon she met Nora Whitfield, the royal healer, under the excuse of discussing the birth. Claire asked one question that made Nora set down her notes. After the baby is born, who has legal authority over where the royal heir lives? Nora did not know. Claire went to the archive. She did not bury herself in old law for days. She asked for the current royal household statutes and found the answer within an hour. The ruling Alpha held final authority over the heir's residence whenever succession security was invoked. Claire read the line again. The throne was no longer the danger. The child was. Ethan could replace her as Luna and still require their son or daughter to remain at Blackwood Palace. That evening, she summoned Thomas Avery, an attorney who had once managed her late father's estate. They met in the small chapel library. Thomas listened without interrupting as Claire described what she had heard. He did not ask whether Ethan loved her. Lawyers, Claire thought, had the useful habit of treating love as irrelevant to power. There is one protection, Thomas said. Maternal sanctuary. It was written for royal mothers who feared being separated from a child by crown authority. Can Ethan override it? Not if it is properly filed before palace guardianship begins. He would retain parental rights. He simply could not use the throne to decide everything alone. Claire looked down at her stomach. That was all she wanted. Not to take the child from Ethan. Not revenge. A line he could not cross merely because he was king. What would I need? Independent residence. Evidence of a credible custodial threat. And the courage to leave before he can change the circumstances. Claire thought of Willowmere, the mountain estate her father had left her. Small. Cold. Beyond direct royal military control. Prepare it, she said. Thomas studied her face. Does His Majesty know? Claire remembered Ethan thanking her for understanding. No, she said. And for now, I need him not to. The next wound came from the nursery. Claire found Victoria there on a gray afternoon, standing beside the unfinished cradle while 2 palace decorators held fabric samples against the walls. Victoria wore silver, the color favored by the northern houses, and she had one hand resting on the carved rail as though imagining the room after Claire was gone. Everyone froze when Claire entered. Lady Victoria, she said. I didn't realize the nursery was part of the summit tour. Victoria smiled with practiced warmth. It wasn't meant to be. The steward brought me through the wrong corridor. One decorator looked at the floor. Claire saw a folded design sheet on the table. At the top, in a clerk's hand, were the words Luna. Household transition. She picked it up. Victoria's smile tightened. Surely Ethan has explained. Claire looked at her. Explained what? The answer came too quickly. That after the child is born, there will be changes. Rooms. Staff. Ceremonial duties. Nothing that needs to be unpleasant if everyone behaves with dignity. Claire placed the paper back on the table. And which room were you choosing for yourself? Victoria's eyes flickered toward the connecting door that led from the nursery to Claire and Ethan's private apartments. For the first time, anger pierced Claire's numbness. Not jealousy. Not fear of another woman. The realization that people were already measuring her rooms, planning her absence, rehearsing a life in which she still existed somewhere in the kingdom but no longer mattered here. I'm sorry, Victoria said, though she did not sound sorry. Political marriages are rarely kind. Mine was not political when I entered it. Victoria studied her. Perhaps that is why this is difficult for you. Claire almost answered. Instead, she smiled. Enjoy the summit. She walked away before Victoria could see how deeply the words had landed. In the corridor, Claire found Ethan at the far end speaking with commanders. He saw her and smiled. The sight of him beside the life they had built nearly broke her resolve. That night, he brought a small wooden wolf to the nursery. He had carved it himself as a boy. he said, and wanted their child to have something that did not come from royal craftsmen. Claire ran her thumb over the worn ears. If something important were going to change in our family, she asked quietly, would you tell me before everyone else knew? Ethan went still. The pause was brief, but Claire felt it like a door closing. Of course. She looked directly into his eyes. Good. He touched her cheek, and she hated that part of her still wanted to lean into his hand. The following morning, Thomas brought the sanctuary papers. Claire needed proof that separation from her child was a real possibility. She returned to the archive and searched the current Northern Treaty packet. The guardianship language was there. Permanent palace residence for the royal heir after birth. Claire's courtesy title and independent estate in the south. Her stomach turned. Yet something about the pages looked wrong. The ink on the guardianship section was darker. A clerk's authentication mark did not match the earlier pages. Thomas examined the copy and frowned. Ethan may not have signed this version. Claire felt no relief. Did he sign the part replacing me? Yes. Then whether he intended to take my child or merely created the opening for someone else to do it, I still need sanctuary. Thomas nodded. Claire signed. The papers would be registered with an independent moon magistrate before the summit ended. That evening, Ethan found her sitting alone in the dark nursery. Claire. She looked toward the cradle. Do you ever think about what kind of ruler our child should become? Ethan sat beside her, strong enough not to be controlled. Claire almost smiled at the cruelty of the answer. And kind enough not to control the people they love? Ethan turned toward her. She rose before he could respond. I'm tired. He watched her leave, and for the first time he did not look merely confused. He looked worried. By the time Victoria moved into the royal guest wing, Claire had begun leaving in pieces. She did not empty her rooms overnight or send trunks through the main gate. She gave Helen Carter temporary authority over her relief programs. She asked Grace Miller, her maid and closest confidant, to send a few winter dresses and baby blankets to Willowmere with ordinary supply wagons. She placed her mother's letters in a small leather case and gave Thomas a list of what belonged to her personally. That was enough. The rest could remain. Claire was surprised by how little she needed once she stopped imagining the palace as home. Ethan noticed the changes, but misunderstood them. He began arriving earlier to dinner. Once he canceled an evening council session entirely and found Claire already gone to bed. Another night, he asked if she wanted to walk through the winter garden, something they had not done in months. Claire went with him. Snow pressed white against the glass roof. Ethan told her the Northern Alliance would prevent bloodshed before spring. Claire listened. Does peace always require someone to lose something? She asked. Sometimes. And who decides which person loses it? Ethan stopped walking. For a moment, she thought he might finally tell her. Instead, he said, that is why leadership is difficult. Claire turned away. Yes, I suppose it is. The summit began the next morning. Victoria appeared beside Ethan at military briefings where Claire had once stood. It was explained as courtesy to the Northern delegation. At lunch, Victoria answered a question about future winter festivals before anyone had asked Claire. At the evening reception, an ambassador congratulated Victoria on her coming service to the crown, then turned crimson when he saw Claire within hearing distance. Claire saved him from humiliation by asking about his journey. Ethan witnessed all of it. Each time his expression grew tighter. Each time he still said nothing. Victoria finally sought Claire out in the nursery again, this time without witnesses. You are making this harder than it needs to be, she said. Claire folded a small linen shirt. By doing what? By behaving as though nothing is changing. Something is changing? Victoria's patience snapped. After the birth, I will be Luna. You will be given another residence. Ethan has already agreed. Claire kept folding. And the child? The heir remains here, naturally. The room became very quiet. Claire looked up. Naturally. Victoria mistook her calm for ignorance and continued. My father insisted on that protection after Ethan signed the first treaty. He said the king was too sentimental where you were concerned. Claire stopped breathing for half a second. After Ethan signed? Victoria realized too late what she had revealed. Claire saw it in the tightening of her mouth. You should forget I said that. I doubt I will. Victoria stepped closer. You think this makes you powerful? It changes nothing. Ethan agreed to replace you before my father altered a single line. The kingdom came first. The words should have hurt. Instead, they clarified everything. There were two betrayals. Duke Hale had forged control over the heir and the throne. Ethan had freely opened the door by treating Claire's marriage as negotiable. Claire did not need to confuse them. That night, she wrote down Victoria's admission and sent it to Thomas. Then she placed an anonymous copy of the altered treaty in Counselor Marcus Reed's private dispatch box. Marcus was Ethan's oldest advisor and loyal enough to investigate without panic. Claire still intended to leave, but she would not let the Hales take the kingdom simply because Ethan had failed her. Near midnight, Ethan came to their bedroom and found half the shelves empty. He touched the bare space where Claire's favorite books had been. "Where are your things?" "Some were sent north." "Why?" Claire looked at him. "Because I may need them there." Ethan's face changed. Before he could ask another question, a hard knock sounded at the door. Marcus stood outside holding the copied treaty. "Your Majesty," he said. "We need to speak now." Ethan looked from the document to Claire. She saw the exact moment he understood that the silence around him had never meant safety. Ethan spent the night discovering that the worst line in the treaty was not the one Duke Hale had forged. It was the promise Ethan had signed himself. Marcus confirmed that the clauses controlling the child's residence and education had been added later through a clerk in Hale's office. By dawn, the clerk had confessed. Duke Hale expected the changes to remain hidden until Victoria was already seated as Luna, and Claire had been pushed outside the center of royal power. Then Marcus placed the original agreement beside the altered one. Ethan saw his own signature beneath the sentence naming Victoria as political Luna after Claire gave birth. That line was real. No forgery had made him sign it. At breakfast, Claire sat with Nora when Victoria entered wearing pale silver. A servant approached with the ceremonial Luna cup, hesitated, and placed it beside Victoria by mistake. No one breathed. Victoria looked at the cup, but did not move it. Ethan crossed the room, picked it up, and set it in front of Claire. It was a small gesture. Claire's expression told him exactly how small. "We need to speak," Ethan said to Victoria. Claire began to rise. "I'll leave you." "No." The word came out like a command. Claire stopped. Ethan heard himself. "Please stay," he corrected. "If you want to." Claire sat again. Marcus entered carrying the altered treaty and the clerk's confession. Ethan asked Victoria whether she knew her father had changed the agreement after it was signed. She denied it. Then he asked why she had told Claire that Duke Hale demanded control of the child only after the first treaty was complete. Victoria turned sharply toward Claire. That one look answered more than her denial. Marcus read the confession. Victoria's composure cracked. "My father was protecting the North. He was preparing to control my child," Ethan said. "Our heir," Victoria snapped. Claire's eyes lifted. Ethan's voice went cold. "Claire's child. My child. Not yours." Victoria looked at Claire with naked fury. "Do not pretend this changes what he did. He agreed to replace you before my father altered a single word." Claire looked at Ethan. "I know. The guards took Victoria away." Ethan asked Claire to come to his study. She refused. "The chapel library," she said. "Thomas will be there." That choice cut deeper than anger. Claire no longer trusted a private room with him when power was involved. Thomas was waiting beside the sanctuary papers. "You filed against me," Ethan said. "I filed for my child. I would never take the baby from you." Claire placed the original treaty between them. "You decided I could lose my place beside you without speaking to me. Why should I trust that you would discover your limit only after the baby was born?" Ethan spoke of the northern pass, threatened villages, winter roads, and soldiers who could be trapped if Hale closed the border. Claire let him finish. Then she asked, "If Hale had demanded your throne instead of mine, would you have signed before telling yourself?" Ethan had no answer. "Then you understand. I thought I could protect you. Your lands, your title, your household. You planned to remove me from my own marriage and call comfort protection. That was not how I thought of it. That is the problem, Ethan. You never stood where I was standing." Claire told him the sanctuary order would be complete by morning. She intended to leave for Willowmere as soon as Nora approved the journey. The old instinct rose in him at once. Close the gates. Delay the carriage. Keep Claire in the palace until the child was born. Every option was available to the Alpha King. Claire watched his face and seemed to know exactly which battle was happening inside him. Ethan swallowed the command. "What does Nora recommend?" "Slow travel. Frequent stops. No military escort. May I provide civilian guards?" "Thomas already has." Ethan nodded. "Then I won't interfere." For the first time that morning, Claire's expression changed. Not forgiveness. Not trust. Only surprise. Ethan understood how low the standard had become and how much of that was his fault. The emergency council began at noon and ended the Hale alliance before sunset. Duke Gregory Hale arrived furious and left under guard. Letters bearing his seal proved he had ordered the treaty revisions. The compromised clerk confessed that Northern officials expected to control the future heir through Victoria's Luna authority. Ethan voided the alliance, suspended every official who had authenticated the forged pages, and opened negotiations with smaller northern pacts so no single family could again hold the kingdom hostage through one mountain pass. Then, before the entire council, he did something none of his advisors expected. He admitted his own part. The forgery succeeded because I had already agreed to a bargain that treated another person's rights as mine to trade, he said. That failure was mine. No one in the room needed Claire's name spoken. Afterward, Marcus told him the confession would weaken him politically. Ethan looked toward the doors. Good. Marcus frowned. Good. Maybe I should feel some of the weakness I was willing to hand to someone else. He found Claire in the nursery. The room looked almost untouched, yet everything personal was gone. No letters. No favorite books. No shawl over the chair. Only the cradle remained by the window. Claire stood beside it with one hand on her back. The alliance is finished, Ethan said. Victoria will never be Luna. I know. The guardianship clauses are void. I know. Ethan stared at her. And you're still leaving? Yes. He felt something raw and unfamiliar. Then tell me what fixes this. Claire looked tired rather than angry. You still think there is a thing you can do that will make me return to the position you want me in? Ethan opened his mouth. She continued. Ask a different question. He stood very still. What do you want? The words sounded simple. They were not. Claire looked at the cradle. I wanted you to believe my life belonged to me. I wanted my husband to speak to me before deciding where I would live, what I would be called, and who would sit beside him after I gave birth to his child. I wanted to be your partner before I was your Luna. You are my partner. Only when my choice matches yours. The truth landed harder because she said it softly. Ethan asked whether she still loved him. Claire closed her eyes. I wish love had been enough to protect me from you. He looked away. A sudden tightening crossed Claire's face. Nora entered moments later and confirmed she was having irregular contractions. Not labor yet, but stress could bring it closer. Ethan reacted before thinking. You are not traveling tomorrow. Claire went motionless. The old pattern stood between them, alive and immediate. Ethan heard it. He took a breath. I'm sorry. Nora, what do you recommend? Nora advised rest overnight. If the contractions stopped, Claire could choose in the morning. Ethan nodded and stepped back. That night he remained outside the nursery because he could not bear to go far. Near midnight he lifted his hand to knock, then stopped. Every door in the palace opened because he was king. This one would open only if Claire wanted him inside. She did not. At dawn, Nora reported the contractions had eased. Claire came downstairs dressed for travel in a dark blue cloak. Ethan stood in the front hall. Behind him, servants had gathered without meaning to. Everyone understood what they were witnessing. The Alpha King could close every gate in the capital with one order. Instead he asked, Is there anything you need for the road? Claire looked at him for a long moment. No. Then I hope it is safe. She nodded. A herald approached and announced that the court was waiting in the throne room for Ethan's public declaration against the Hales. Claire glanced toward the distant doors. Your kingdom is waiting. Ethan looked at her. So are you. No, she said gently. That is what you have not understood. I stopped waiting. Then she turned toward the courtyard. Ethan did not watch Claire's carriage leave. If he had, he was not sure he would have trusted himself to remain still. Instead, he walked into the throne room carrying the original treaty in one hand and the forged revision in the other. Nobles packed the galleries. Northern delegates stood rigid beneath their banners. Victoria was absent, confined under guard. The silver Luna throne beside Ethan's Blackwood seat waited empty. Marcus read the charges against Duke Hale. Ethan presented the evidence and formally dissolved the alliance. Then he addressed the part no court expected a king to discuss in public. He said Claire had not authorized the agreement affecting her title, marriage, or future residence. He declared that no Luna could be politically replaced without her informed consent and independent review. A counselor objected that royal marriages had always carried duties beyond personal preference. Ethan answered, Duty does not make consent unnecessary. It makes it more important. The room fell silent. He ordered permanent reform drafted immediately, whether Claire ever returned or not. Only after the vote passed did he allow himself to look at the silver throne. He had imagined Claire sitting there while the court restored what he had nearly taken. The empty chair made the whole ceremony feel less like victory than testimony. A guard approached and whispered that Claire's carriage had reached the eastern gate. Ethan stopped speaking. His wolf surged with one clear instinct. Follow. He gripped the edge of the throne until his knuckles whitened. Then Grace Miller appeared at the side entrance carrying a velvet box. Her Majesty asked me to give you this after she left the palace grounds. Ethan opened it. The Luna crown rested inside. Beneath it was a copy of the registered sanctuary order. No letter. No plea. No punishment. Claire had not left words because she had already spent days saying goodbye in every way he failed to notice. Ethan placed the crown on the empty silver seat. Claire Bennett has left under lawful maternal sanctuary, he told the court. No guard, official, noble, or pack leader will interfere with her journey. No one will attempt to compel her return. Any petition regarding the royal child will follow independent law, not my rank. An older alpha protested that the heir could not simply be carried beyond direct royal control. Ethan looked at him. The heir is with the child's mother. The mother is not royal property. By evening, the sentence had crossed half the kingdom. Claire heard it 2 days later at a roadside inn when Nora read the official dispatch aloud. Claire sat near the fire with swollen ankles and a bowl of broth cooling in her hands. She said nothing for several seconds. Do you believe him? Nora asked. Claire looked toward the dark window. I believe he let me leave. That was not forgiveness. But it was the first proof that Ethan could choose not to use power simply because he possessed it. The journey to Willowmere took 5 days. Claire reached the mountain estate under light snow. The house was smaller than Blackwood Palace and older than she remembered. The roof needed work. One window in the east room rattled in the wind. Claire loved it immediately. Thomas met her with the sanctuary seal. Once she crossed the threshold, the order became fully active. 3 days later, labor began before dawn. Nora sent formal notice to Ethan because he was the father and still had rights, sanctuary or not. The message reached Blackwood Palace after midnight. Claire is in labor. Mother and child are stable. Ethan stood with the paper in his hands. Every instinct told him to ride north with guards and authority. Instead, he asked Marcus one question. What does the order allow? You may request permission to visit. Request. Months earlier, the word would have sounded insulting to a king. Now it sounded like a test. Ethan wrote only 4 words beneath Claire's name. May I come? The reply reached him before dawn. You may come alone. Ethan left his guards at the Willowmere boundary stone and walked the final half-mile through fresh snow. No sword, no royal seal, no black ceremonial coat. Thomas Avery met him at the door and reminded him that sanctuary law placed Claire's wishes above palace custom inside the estate. Ethan said he understood. Nora led him upstairs. Claire was awake, pale with exhaustion, her hair loose around her shoulders. A newborn girl slept against her chest beneath a cream blanket. Ethan stopped in the doorway. For all his speeches and public confessions, nothing had prepared him for the sight of his daughter in Claire's arms. May I come closer? He asked. Claire nodded. He sat beside the bed. The baby had Claire's mouth and a small crease between her brows. When she opened her eyes, they were silver gray. Her name is Lily Grace Blackwood, Claire said. Grace, standing near the window, immediately began crying. Claire almost smiled. Ethan kept his hands on his knees. May I hold her? Claire placed Lily in his arms. Ethan had commanded armies without trembling. He trembled now. Lily curled one tiny hand around his finger. Hello, he whispered. Then, after a pause, my daughter. Not heir. Not successor. Claire noticed. When Lily began to fuss, Ethan looked to Claire. What should I do? Hold her closer. He did. Lily settled against his chest. Something in Claire loosened before she could stop it. After Nora carried the sleeping baby to the adjoining room, Ethan and Claire spoke alone. He did not ask her to return. He told her the emergency protections had passed and permanent reforms were being drafted. Did you do that because you want me back? Claire asked. At first, yes. The honesty surprised her. Then I realized that would only be another bargain. I changed them because they were wrong. He did not blame Hale, Fear, Winter, or the council. I decided your consent was optional because I believed my reasons were important enough. That was the betrayal. Hale only showed me what could grow from it. Claire's eyes filled. Ethan reached toward her hand, then stopped. May I? Not yet. All right. He stayed for the 1 hour. Claire had allowed. Before leaving, he stood beside Lily's cradle. May I visit again? Ask me in a week. At the door, Ethan turned back. I am sorry I made you need a law to feel safe from your husband. Claire looked away before he could see the tears. Repair did not happen in one grand gesture. It happened in ordinary choices no court would ever record. A week later, Ethan wrote and asked to visit. Claire allowed 2 hours. The next time she allowed 3. Sometimes he held Lily while Claire slept. He learned how to warm a bottle, how to recognize a hungry cry, and how to walk the upstairs corridor until Lily closed her eyes. Other visits were harder. One afternoon, a royal messenger reached Willowmere while Ethan was holding Lily. A dispute had broken out between 2 northern packs. The council wanted an immediate ruling. Claire watched Ethan's face change. She knew that expression. For years it had meant that whatever stood in front of him was about to become less important than the kingdom. Ethan looked down at Lily, then at Claire. My visit ends in 40 minutes, he said. The messenger blinked. Your Majesty, the council said it was urgent. Then tell them to prepare the facts. I will answer when I return. Claire said nothing. Ethan stayed exactly 40 minutes. He did not leave early because the council demanded him, and he did not stay longer because Lily fell asleep against his chest. When the time ended, he placed their daughter carefully in Claire's arms and left. By midnight, the northern dispute was resolved. Claire understood something she had not expected. Ethan was not learning to care less about the kingdom. He was learning that one duty did not give him permission to erase another. Weeks passed. Claire finally asked, why did you believe I would accept Victoria? Ethan did not hide behind being king. Because I thought protecting the kingdom was my burden, and accepting the result was yours. Claire waited. I was wrong. There was no speech after that. Lily woke in the next room and began to cry. Ethan looked toward the sound, then back at Claire. May I get her? Claire hesitated only a second. Yes. It was a small answer, but it was. The first time she trusted him to cross a room without needing to watch where he would go. In early spring, Ethan brought no gift for Claire, only a reconstruction proposal from villages affected by the broken Hale alliance. I want your opinion, he said. Claire raised an eyebrow. You want it, or you need my public support? Ethan almost smiled. I want it. If you think it is terrible, I will still take the maps home. They argued over roads, grain storage, and medical stations for 3 hours. Ethan changed 2 sections because Claire's reasoning was better. He left without asking whether she was proud of him. Weeks later, Claire received the permanent reform charter. Her sanctuary rights would remain even if she never returned. There was no hidden condition tying the reforms to reconciliation. That evening, when Ethan came to see Lily, Claire invited him to dinner for the first time. He did not pretend it meant forgiveness. Summer came. Lily learned to laugh. Ethan learned that making his daughter laugh was more satisfying than winning a council vote and far harder to predict. One afternoon, Claire found him beneath the orchard trees with Lily squealing in his arms. Ethan looked toward Claire before lifting the baby higher. Too much. She loves it. He smiled, uncertain. Claire realized the Alpha King who once entered every room already knowing what he would do had learned to leave space for another person's answer. Months after Claire left Blackwood Palace, the council invited her to address the kingdom on maternal sanctuary reform. She accepted. When her carriage entered the capital, there were no soldiers arranged to escort her as property returning home. Ethan waited at the palace steps with Lily in his arms because Claire had asked him to bring her from Willowmere after his last visit. Inside the throne room, the silver Luna chair remained beside Ethan's. Claire's old crown rested on its cushion. Ethan did not pick it up when she entered. He simply stood. Claire addressed the court about power, marriage, law, and the danger of calling control protection. When she finished, the chamber rose. Ethan did not approach until everyone else had stepped back. Do you want me beside you? He asked quietly. Claire looked toward the silver throne. As Luna? As Claire. The title is yours only if you want it. And if I say no? Ethan looked at Lily, who was tugging at his collar. Then I will take our daughter home when you ask me to, come to Willowmere when you invite me, and keep every law we changed because they were right. I will still love you. I just won't use love as an argument. Claire felt the last hard piece of anger inside her shift. Not disappear. Shift. Healing was not the absence of memory. It was the ability to remember without being trapped by what happened. She took Lily from Ethan and held their daughter between them. You called her your daughter the first day you met her, Claire said. Ethan frowned slightly. Not your heir. He looked at Lily. She was my daughter before she was anything else. Claire's eyes burned. That answer mattered more than any speech in the throne room. She handed Lily back to him, then lifted the Luna crown from the silver cushion with her own hands. Ethan did not move to help. Claire placed it on her head and sat because she chose to sit. Ethan took the Blackwood throne beside her with Lily asleep against his chest. The court saw a king, a Luna, and their child restored to one another. Claire knew the truth was quieter and harder one. Ethan had not earned obedience. He had learned respect. Claire had not returned because she had nowhere else to go. She had Willowmere, legal protection, her own work, and the strength to leave again if she ever needed to. She stayed because freedom had changed the meaning of staying. Ethan looked toward her before the council resumed, a question in his eyes instead of an assumption. Claire gave the smallest nod. Only then did he speak.